Good afternoon and welcome to H3 TV. It's been a while. I've missed you. I hope you've missed me. H3 TV was created during COVID to help people find hope, health, and happiness in the midst of a challenging time. But as we know about life, there's always challenging times. And since Hurricane Ian hit on September 28th, which was a Wednesday, I have not aired an H3 TV since September 21st, I believe. And so I'm back and I'm trying to get back on track. Greg and I are still in transition. We are renting a place through the end of this year in Fort Myers, and we're looking for another place for the month of January and hoping to move back into our home on Fort Myers Beach the end of January. But I thank you for joining us here, and please feel free to ask any questions or comments throughout this. I do this because I want to remind people that sometimes we feel hopeless and unhealthy and unhappy, but there's always hope, health, and happiness to be had if we look for it. And so I love to gather with you every Wednesday and bring you a guest that gets to share their tips on how they live like that, take care of themselves personally, and promote to other people. So please help me welcome to the stage, Jason. Hey, Jason, thanks for being with me tonight.
Hey, Annie, thanks for having me. This is great. I've been looking
Abs-
forward to this.
Good, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about you. Who are you? What do you do? And why do you care about H3?
Sure. Yeah, I am an up-and-coming professional speaker, author, and executive in the behavioral healthcare industry. Connected with you, Annie, through the National Speakers Association here in Minnesota, the chapter. And I remember when you presented to the Academy and really felt connected to your mission and started following you and continued to just communicate. And I'm glad we finally got some time together.
Yeah, I love it. I love meeting new people and hearing their story. Why are we passionate about these things that matter so much to me and obviously matter to you? So I want to know, Jason, for you personally, what are 3 to 5 tips that you use, strategies to stay hopeful, healthy, and happy?
Oh, where do I start? I think, hopeful for me comes from experience. I have a long experience in recovery and addiction, and just in this space as a employee and as an advocate, and also just in my personal life and within my family. So recovery is a huge channel for me to stay hopeful, healthy, and happy. I really love exercise, physically speaking, exercise, nutrition, and sleep. I've just learned so much about how important that is to staying healthy physically, which then creates space for me to do the same mentally. So my physical health, my recovery, those are 2 huge things. Family is key to me. I've been fortunate to have a large family that seems to just continue to grow year after year. And so that's also a huge part of my journey and what keeps me happy and
So if you were
gratitude.
looking at morning though, Jason, I want to know more specific. Like, so somebody's listening right now and they're saying, hey, Jason, let me be honest with you. I am not feeling fab. I am not. What are some of your very specific strategies? What do you do in the morning or in the evening? What are things that are 90% of the time you are going to do these, and that's how you're maintaining your recovery and your health? What are some key strategies that you have in your day of practice?
Sure. Every morning, one of the first things I do, I get in my car and I head off to the coffee shop on my way to work. And before I really try to do anything at all other than start my car, from then I'm stopping and I'm saying some prayers and saying 3 things. I'm really pinpointing 3 things every day that I'm grateful for. And some days that feels a little bit like I'm on autopilot, but I still do that. And it's something every single morning. I recognize 3 things that I'm grateful for, and it makes me think about those things, and it just gets me off to a good start for the day. The evening, I come home, and one of the first things I try to do is get to the gym. As much as many days I walk through that door and I just want to sit on the couch, or I just feel like I could go to bed, I just put one foot in front of the other and get to that gym, because I know that my physical health is key, and that, unless I hurt myself, I will always feel better after that workout. So those
That's
are 2 beginning and end of day practices that I have almost daily,
I love
95%.
that. And I think, Jason, a really important part of that is about the routine, right? And for those of us that have lived in chaos or addiction or just challenging, having a rhythm and a routine is really important. So you said gratitude, which I love. We're in the month of November, Thanksgiving month. I'm always like, first be grateful, then be generous. Be grateful and then be generous. And I think that you have that routine, whether it feels like you feel like it or not. You remember three things you're grateful for, and you go get your coffee. So you have like these two things. And then at night, of course, always, we don't always feel like going to the gym, but you go to the gym and you're glad you did. And we know that the gym, I always say movement is medicine. The gym is, yes, good for our physical body, but so good for our mental and emotional health, and just that release place, release your stress so you can go on with the day. So, what do you think that hope and happiness comes to you by choice or by chance or based on circumstances?
Oh boy. I mean, I think depending on the day and the circumstance or the situation, it can be either, um, circumstances early on in my life and even into addiction and some of the struggles I had with my mental health. Circumstances really drove me to a place where, I didn't have any other option, and I found help. And so that drove me to have some hope, only because I was put around a bunch of people who struggled that were much like me. And even when I didn't have hope for myself that this was something that I could accomplish, I had hope that the other people that were around me were telling the truth when they were saying, I used to have all these problems and today I'm better. And so those circumstances really drove me to some level of hope. And I know today, now that I'm beyond those years, and though I still have some struggles, it's about choice. I wake up each day, and again, like I said, it's about the choice to say, I am going to talk to myself and to a power that I believe in about things that I'm grateful for, and I am going to choose to see the things that bring me hope. Put the positive things. I read meditation books each morning as well, several of them, and I do those things intentionally. So there's choice in that matter for sure.
Absolutely, Jason. I think that I always consider myself a person in recovery, and I've done a lot of work in the recovery area of addiction. But I'm in recovery from the first 20 years living in depression and using drugs and alcohol to cope with that depression of the environment. And when I got healthy and whole myself, and I don't recommend this, I just have a lot of strategies now, right? Like for some people, you need to get rid of that. And I love that you have the community of that. I think you make 100% choice, Jason, because you already stated, I don't always feel like my routine in the morning. I don't always feel like my exercise in the evening, but I am choosing that. And part of that is taking care of yourself so that you can be in recovery. Recovery is so much more than just stopping a vice, alcohol, drugs, pornography, whatever people struggle with. It is making the decision to replace that with better choices, right? With prayer time, meditation. So I love what you're saying. How long have you been in recovery, Jason?
I am just a few weeks here. I will have been in recovery for 12 years. So
Wow.
December, right around the holidays in 2010, I went to treatment, and I've been fortunate to stay away and live a healthy, happy, hopeful life since.
That's amazing. And I want you to know that you, as being vulnerable with your own story, are helping other people out there twofold. One, those still struggling with addiction of many forms, and also those that love people that are struggling with addiction. I always think when I meet people in recovery, it's such a good reminder that there's always hope, no matter how broken or sad a story is, and how deep a love is. There's always hope for people to get the help they need and to change, to replace those habits with new things. So thank you for sharing that. What's the big difference between being hopeful and optimistic?
Oh, hopeful and optimistic. So optimistic, I think, is a little bit for me more of a perspective and a way of being for me as I think about things and as I approach things, and that can shift from time to time. There are days where I'm the pessimist in the room, and there are days where I'm the optimist. But again, the things that I like to do in the morning and throughout the day and in the evening, and the people I interact with, always give some sort of hope. And to your point earlier, as I put myself in positions and with people and around people who have had struggles and just might be dealing with some of the times that's disheartening, and at the same time it's also hopeful, because again, if I can see, not to put you on the spot, but your journey through this hurricane, and I can watch you just kind of progress through that, that gives me hope that and maybe it's not the same scenario as someone walking through addiction or somebody who's lost a family member, but it is a journey that I get to watch, and I get to see the progression of things are really bad and they just slowly get better if we continue to put one foot in front of the other. So hope is something that I think can always be out there. The optimism, again, for me, can change from day to day or hour to hour even. So yeah, that's the key difference for me.
It is a big difference. I do feel that. I feel like people right away after the storm said, you should do a keynote, you should write a book. And I was like, holy cow, I'm trying to like survive and like get up. I still like when people say, are you okay? I say, I'm not quite okay yet, but I'm stable. It's much harder to think when you are in the midst of a trauma or have just gone through a trauma. And the vibration of that building stays with me. And I have a lot of nightmares still, but I'm doing way, way better. But I do think at some point there's going to be a keynote called Weathering the Storms of Our Lives, and seeking out that hope, seeking out that sunshine in the midst of the dark days, and the kindness of random strangers and friends and community that have lit my path to be able to continue to heal and move forward in my own journey. So thank you for recognizing that. And also, I just want to remind our listeners that, if anyone has a question or a comment throughout for myself or for Jason, please feel free to put it in the comment box and we will address those as we can. So how about happiness and joy? Is there a difference between that, Jason?
Oh, happiness. I think joy is this thing that comes from inside. Well, the joy for me is always there. It's not something that changes with time or with circumstance. I don't always experience it because there are circumstances that get in the way and that block me from that joy. But that joy to me is that innate feeling of, things are just okay, and they're going to be okay, and they're good, and what we have is good. And happiness, again, is similar to that. The last analogy, happiness can go up and down. And, certainly there are times where I can choose things that will make me happy, but there are also going to be times where tragedy strikes, deal with something that you deal with, and it is just hard to put the happy face on. Whereas again, I've been in the middle of tragedy, and I've seen people in the middle of tragedy. When I went to treatment, for example, I didn't have anything to my name. I didn't have a bank account, a social security card, a driver's license, a couch, a place to live, a car, a job. And somehow in those moments, that joy was coming out because I was finally doing something to change the trajectory of my life. And so I might not always been happy with my circumstances, but I felt this joy that it was going to be okay. And there was something worth living out here. So I think joy is innate, and happiness can, be contributed to internally and externally. But that joy kind of comes from within for me.
I love that answer, Jason. I think that is very much what I believe, and true to me is that I have joy in the midst of the worst circumstances and the hardest pain and challenges. So I just lost my second sibling in July. And she and I were never very close. She was an addict her whole life. And unfortunately, they said she died of natural causes at 56. And I was like, there's nothing natural about dying at 56, but when you wear your body down with drugs and alcohol your whole life, eventually your body says enough. And I've been very sad about her more and I just saw her autopsy. And so just sadder the last week or two about her death than even when it happened in July. So it happened July 28th. The hurricane happened September 28th. And people said things happen in threes. I'm like, first of all, don't put that out there. And second of all, my dog went blind about a week and a half, or maybe 2 weeks ago now. I don't know. I don't know what day it is, but things do happen in threes, but it can happen in threes. I'm not always going to say they do, but circumstances can't steal the joy that I feel, though I feel great sadness about pieces of my life or my story, as you're saying, like, and now look at, you didn't have anything. And now look at your life and how beautiful and blessed and full it is. And some of those basic things for people in addiction, just having a driver's license, just having a couch, are so far gone. And then all of a sudden you start to live whole and healed. And you're like, oh, Like I can have that and something else, and I can dream about even something better. I'm so happy for you in that. And again, I know a lot of listeners struggle with addiction. I know that COVID has really amped up alcohol. We know alcohol sales are the top rising thing since COVID hit, and COVID's somewhat gone and still there, but people isolate and then they drink and then they go in and they want to stop, but it's so socially acceptable that they don't want to not. I was just talking to someone about this the other day and they said, how do you respond to people? They were asking me because they have a lot of corporate events and they're like, when I show up, they're like, what are you having to drink? Well, I'm having to drink. How do you respond? And I gave them like 10 answers. They're like, oh my gosh, thank you. And I said, you don't have to explain anything to anyone, and you can choose to drink or not drink, if, but there's that pressure. So I just appreciate you be telling that and talking about it. When that, as you're talking about, when that doubt slips in, those unhappiness, first of all, what steals your joy and your happiness, or your happiness in your life? And then what is your strategy to get out of it? So give us an example of a time when you felt like, oh my gosh, this is a lot. And then what do? Because when we sink, which we all sink at different times, what are your reshift to get back out of it?
Yeah, I can give a very specific example. I learned early on in my recovery, probably a few years in, I got with a life coach and we did a lot of work on values. We really hit what are my values for Jason Lennox and what can I do to align the rest of my life with those? Because then that's when things started sinking for me. Sinking meaning coming together, not sinking like the ship. But the example, I can remember very specifically driving to a hospital. This was probably 7 years ago. I had started this chapter of a national nonprofit. And what we did was bring events into pediatric units for children with cancer and other serious diseases. And I can remember making the drive to Rochester, the Mayo Clinic, and feeling the stress from work. And work does that a lot because I'm in this addiction treatment industry, and it's fast moving. We're in an epidemic. And so the stressors and the changes with healthcare insurance and regulatory policy and all that is just so shifting all the time. But so my work can bring a lot of stress, and it did. I was very stressful thinking about my job and, the bills and the things that were just coming up and all the things that I can get so self-consumed about. And it's hard to stop that. And I got to the hospital and we put on this event. And I just remember seeing this 5-year-old boy, and there were a bunch of other kids there as well, but they were running around, and these kids were seriously ill. Some of them were terminally ill. And I watched these kids run around this event that we were fortunate enough to put on, like they had the greatest lives on planet Earth. And these people, these children were confined to this hospital. And again, some knew that they probably weren't going to live that long. And the smiles on these children, it just struck me. And I'll never forget that moment, because it was then I walked out of that hospital and I thought, oh my goodness, I don't have any business thinking that my life is anything but great. And my point in all that is service work and charity and contributing to others not only fulfills, the void that I was trying to fill for so long, but it also helps me get a new perspective and understand that my situation most of the time is nothing compared to what a lot of people deal with in this world. And even in my addiction, I lost my father to addiction. And so as bad as that was, I still had another chance. And service always brings me back to that fulfillment. But, sometimes more importantly, there are a lot of people in this world that have things pretty bad, and somehow they find the happiness, the health, and the hope in all situations. And so it was amazing to have that experience.
Love that. I again align with you very much there as well. I really believe gratitude's good, but generosity is great. And I know every time I start to feel sorry for myself or pity, whatever my story is in that season, if I shift my perspective and go serve someone, I always get, wait a minute, Annie, are you kidding me? You have a place to sleep. You have food. I didn't know, I haven't always, I didn't feel like I did for a moment there again, but I've gone on mission trips, and you meet the happiest kids in the world that are going to the bathroom and showering and drinking out of the same water, and they have more joy than most of the people that have so much. And so I think it is that perspective shift. And I think serve. I think those are both really, really key things. There's a man named Tim Gabrielson, and I'll connect you if you'd like, in the Twin Cities. And I think he's with Jason Hewlett out of Utah and another guy out of Vegas. And they now go from hospitals to hospitals, children's hospitals, and volunteer and do magic and comedy. And they're always just sharing ideas. So I will connect you with those guys, and they are just awesome guys that just decided, you know what? When you're feeling sorry for yourself, when you got a hard day, go be with a child that's terminal, let alone go be with their parents who are trying to stay positive in the midst of not only the most one of the biggest fears in the world, to lose our child, but financial burden of enormous bills that you never know how you. So anyway, I love that example of how you're gonna do that. So, or how you shift out of that when things come. So, what are you personally hopeful about your career and your personal life as you look forward to 2023?
Oh, the National Speakers Association comes to mind, and joining that group and walking alongside of some of the best, like you and the others here in Minnesota, and coming to conferences that they just have already, I feel like, changed the perspective that I have, and it's so incredible to see so many people who are out there trying to do this amazing work and inspire people and use stories and experiences and content to really bring hope, the health, the happiness to so many different audiences. And so I'm extremely excited about that. As I was in the academy, which really prepared me to start to move my business forward. And I think 2023 is going to be a jumping off point for me. I've spent 2022 really trying to get clear on what it is that I want to do, who it is that I want to impact, not just in the addiction and recovery field, because this can go everywhere. We could all benefit from this type of thing. And I'm just about 2 weeks away, minus give or take a couple of days, from publishing my addiction memoir. So that is huge on my 2023 plans, is to really get that out and network with as many people as I can, to just share about a journey that hopefully people can relate to, whether they're in addiction or not, because I struggled with a lot of things for a long time, and I have a really beautiful life. So my business and my book are the two things that I am just really excited about for 2023, and so happy I get to learn from people like you and some of the others here in Minnesota and across the country.
That's awesome. And I'm glad that you're staying open and aware that your audience is not just people with addiction. Number one, many people have many addictions, right? And one of my girlfriends that's a dietitian said, I work with people with eating disorders sometimes, but more than anything, there's so many people with disordered eating, right? They hide, they use food or drugs or alcohol to stuff a wounding from their childhood, a wounding from their confidence, their self-esteem, their corporate stress, whatever it is. So you can help a lot of hurting people. And whether we have addiction or not, we have people we love with addiction, and people hurt and deal with that hurt. And so I think your message of healing and hope can affect many audiences. So super excited that you're writing that book and launching yours. So when you think of health, I think of health personally. Owning gyms for 12 years, I came down to 7 areas of health. 7. Can I hold 7? Yeah, 7. So I think of physical, emotional, mental, financial, spiritual, relational, and career health. And is there one of those areas that you really feel like you care about personally, that you're always aware of? And is there one of those areas that you really have a deep love to teach on and to work with people and speak about?
Yeah, well, I used to be a personal trainer. So 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I would have said physical health. And while that's extremely important to me, I think spiritual health is where it all starts for me. And I love to share principles. I know that spiritually, if I can stay sound, that it really is the one that it does something that all the others don't. I can be physically healthy and have a whole bunch of mental health problems, and vice versa. I think spiritually, when I'm at the core, spiritually doing all the things I know I can be doing, should be doing, would be doing, all the others fall into place. If I'm spiritually sound and I'm present and I'm well, I want to go to the gym and stay physically healthy. I want to make sure that my mental health is strong. I want to be in relationship, and money becomes much easier and much less worrisome in my career. I get clear on the things like I'm clear on now, that I have a business and a mission and a purpose to move forward. And so spiritual health 100% is where it starts for me. And then, sharing that with others too, because again, spiritual health, we don't have to make it into religion. I come from recovery where there was a spiritual principle that we taught, and we tried to follow some other power, just not us, like something else. And across religions, I worked with people who were from multiple different religions, who had no religious background. And it's really spiritual health encompasses all of our world to me. And I just love sharing what some of those simple yet powerful principles have been for me, and have been able to see in others as well.
I like that. I think that spiritual health can be your baseline, and it does two things. When we're in charge, we can make a mess out of anything. And when we're in charge, it can create enormous anxiety for us. And when we realize there's a being that's stronger than our spirit, and we ground ourselves in us, then we value ourselves, and we want to work out, and we want to take care of ourselves and make good choices. And I love that you just kind of are saying it encompasses everything for you, right? It's like once I have that, then I realize, oh, I'm valuable, and I want to take care of myself in all these ways, and I can have peace in the midst of the storms of life and the challenges. So, great example. What is one thing confusing about health? There's all these like, oh, can I eat meat? Can I not eat meat? Do I have to work out 4 hours a day? Do I have to, if I'm going to be a faith filled person, do I have to like study and know the Torah, the Bible? Do I have to spend 20 hours? What is your myth that you're like, if I could just tell people, like, come on, that's just a story. It's not true. What is that myth that you'd like to bust for our listeners on any area of health?
Well, I think for me, it's that there are so many different ideas, and ever evolving ideas presented by people, and whether it's physical health and bringing forward nutrition, there are just so many ideas out there, and I don't know that's necessarily a myth, but for me, the biggest thing that I've learned over my time is I really need to understand what works well for me, because somebody might be able to go and find a protein diet and drink shakes for a couple years and lose some weight. And I've done all those things. And what I always come back to is the simplicity of just finding good quality nutrition, exercise, and really just catering it to what my capabilities are, because not all bodies can take in the same amount of nutrition and the same types of products, and not all bodies can handle the same type of physical exercise. Not all of us can buy into all the theories and ideas out there that will bring us millions of dollars, and we wouldn't want that anyway. But I think there are just so many things coming from so many different directions. I think the biggest myth, or the thing that I fall victim to believing, is that all these people are telling me all these things are all right, because that, to your point, what you originally asked, what's confusing, that's the confusing part, is that I have one person saying I should eat 150 grams of protein over here, and this person saying it should be half that. And, I've found a balance in things that make me feel good physically, mentally, spiritually. And I can share those, and those aren't the best ways for everyone else to live. And I understand that. So that's also part of it, that I don't have all the answers, and I don't claim to know everything there is to know. I just know how it works for me.
And I think that's the myth that you're busting, Jason, is that know yourself and know what works for you. And just because it works perfectly for you, there could be somebody that looks like you, acts like you, and it wouldn't work at all for them. So knowing ourselves and not thinking, oh, that worked for you, that works for me, I have to do what you do. No, figuring out what works for you and what you want to do too. There's no shoulding and that shaming and that judgment. All right, I just have one last question for you, Jason. If you could tell somebody who right now is out there struggling with any form of addiction, what I want to know is, what has been the greatest gift that your recovery has given you?
relationships, and I felt like I probably ruined a lot of them. But my relationships, my life is so full of relationships that sometimes it feels exhausting. And I know that I'm so fortunate for that. And the people in my life not only support me when I have my own struggles, they give me someone to support, which also, helps me. And they just bring a sense of happiness and joy and connection into my life that I was missing for so long. I became so lonely and disconnected from people that relationships, they were missing, and I had ruined a lot of them. But I've built so many relationships, and relationships are one of the greatest sources of joy in my life, and they bring so much meaning to me. I'm so connected to people, and I think that's really at our core what we were designed to do as humans. And I just continue to build those with as many people as I can.
So you're telling our listeners that your recovery sobriety, is that correct? No more drugs and alcohol in your life, is that correct? Okay. So you're
Yep.
telling our listeners that are struggling with addiction and that think they cannot have any fun if they're not at happy hour and going to the bar and no one will talk to them and they'll be bored out of their mind, that they could still have a life and have maybe not even the same relationships, have even better relationships?
Oh my goodness. I remember being in my first year of recovery. I really questioned, what am I going to do on weekends? What am I going to do on the holidays? How am I going to handle these challenging situations? Because I only know one way to act in all of those. And I remember asking a guy, so are you telling me you wouldn't drink even if the world was going to end? Because I feel like that probably would, what's the point? I said. And he goes, no, my life is too good. And again, in the beginning, it was hard for me to comprehend what that would actually practically look like in my life. But I would only ask one thing of any listener or watcher, and that's that just believe that what I'm saying is true, because that's what I held on to, what other people told me. And they said, no, it is so much more fun. It is so much more meaningful. And life is so much better on this side. And I did, not knowing how that would, like not being able to comprehend it. And boy, am I so glad that I did, because there is nothing, I say often, that in my worst days, I couldn't have even dreamed of having the problems in my life exist, let alone be my biggest problems, if that makes sense. I just didn't dream. The things I complain about today are things you couldn't have convinced me that I would have had in my life. So believe that I'm honest when I'm saying that, and hang on to that.
I really appreciate that answer. I think it's a gift for, I always know that at least one listener needs exactly what the speaker says, and often there's many. But I also know that many people that struggle with addiction are, it's their greatest fear. What if I'm lonely? What if there's no fun? What if I can never laugh again? And the truth is, what I love that you said is that you were so lonely before, and you kind of try to cover that loneliness with addiction, which is very common for people. And to know that not only will you not be lonely if you choose to do the work to heal and become sober, if you need to become sober. I'm not judging you if you drink. I drink personally, but there's many people that do struggle with addiction in many forms, and so we want that hope that not only can you survive it, there's a beautiful other side to it where relationships are more meaningful, are deeper, that your weekends are more full, sometimes so full you're exhausted from the fun and the connections you have. And so thank you for that. That's a really important gift. So Jason, if someone listening today or that hears this recording in the future wants to connect with you, either connect with you and learn about your book and read it, hire you to speak, or just connect to you and say, hey, I'm an addict. I'm scared. I don't want to admit I'm an addict. Where can I go? What's my first step? What's the best way to connect with you, Jason?
100% LinkedIn, because I am a personal connection kind of guy, and I really would just appreciate any interaction and conversation through messaging. Obviously happy to jump on the phone and use other channels from there. But that's a quick way to get to me. I'll get the message, and it's the quickest way for me to respond and support and answer questions and point people in the right direction. So LinkedIn, Jason Lennox.
I was going to say, and is it just your name? Okay, so Jason Lennox on LinkedIn. Any last thoughts that you want to tell us before we sign off and say good evening to our listeners?
No, I really, again, just appreciate the time, Annie. And as we go into this season, which I loved so dearly because it reminds me of family and being grateful, I just say for those that are hanging on by a thread, just keep hanging on. And whether that's an addiction or any other struggles going on, because, it's this kind of path for me still and for all of us. And we know that on the other side are some really great things. So I wish everyone well as we walk into this holiday season, and be safe and warm and joyous.
Yes, be thankful. Happy Thanksgiving. And remember, be thankful for what you have, but then use your gifts to serve another, whether it's your words or your money or your time or your actions, because there is nothing better when we are feeling sorry for ourselves than to get a fresh perspective and serve someone else who's most often in greater need than even us. Thanks for being with us, Jason, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thanks for our listeners. Take care.
Thanks, Annie. Thanks, everyone.